I've been coding and building applications for customers for 30, 40 years at this point. And one of the things that I've really grown to appreciate in my career is the presence of a strong user experience design team. Uh, I'm building here a solo project and I don't have a user experience design team. So the next best thing I can do is create a custom agent to try to fill that role. So hi, my name is Paul and I'm building a portfolio operating system for active retail traders. I'm building it in public and making it available for free on GitHub. If that topic interests you, please subscribe and like the video. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk through how I created a user experience design agent, and then I'm going to show how I used it to create the initial scaffolding for my portfolio operating system, something I've been really looking forward to doing now for several weeks. Let me flip over to the transcript here. So I've been using in the agent's pane inside of VS Code as usual, and I pulled up my trusty brainstorming agent. So you can't see which agent was responsible for each of these conversations here, but I've been using that brainstorming agent, which I talked about in another video. So I just said, hey, I need you to help me build a user experience design agent, basically, and gave it a few things off the top of my head that I knew were important about form factors, cultures, ethnicities, educational backgrounds, and also a big one is, vision impaired folks. And it went through and it said, okay, let me give a go at that. And it gave me a first pass at a user experience design agent and told me some of the things in it, about what it did. So then I said, okay, well, I don't want you writing any code. And I got triggered a bit by this. I do want it to probably write some code. And as it turns out, it ended up writing a lot of code for me. So I might go back and revisit that. But it did at least, it was aware of, okay, this is what you have in your app right now. And that's good. So I did clarify that I don't really want you to be writing code too much. I mostly want you to be doing prototypes. But I also said, and this gets to something that it's an ongoing challenge that I have with agents in general, is that they frequently come to your side of every argument, right? And as a matter of fact, even worse than that, they not only do they agree with you, but they say, "Oh my God, you're so brilliant," and that's satisfying in its way. But ultimately, I think it's could lead you down a cliff with some bad ideas. So I wanted it to be a strong advocate for end users and push back if I'm asking it to do something that might be negative for them. So I went ahead and it did that update for me. And I won't go through all the rest of this in detail because you can read the transcript. I'll put it up in the chat. I mean, up in the GitHub repo. But it ultimately went and created that. And then I went at the end, I used my closeout agent and it summarized for me what the work it did, and it also created for me a tech debt item that I have to look at in the future here, and that kind of thing. So the closeout agent did its job, and the end result of this is I now have this. If I go to the pull request I created for this, I already approved it. If we look at it, it created for me this pretty robust looking user experience design agent. You can read this on GitHub directly, but I'll just say that I'm not myself a user experience design person, but I've been around a couple of like really brilliant UXD people, and I don't think that they would really argue with too much about this. So I feel pretty decent that, hey, I've got something that's going to do me a good job, going to do me well as a solo dev on this project. Or if people start contributing, it'll help them as well. All right, so that's that. Now let's move back to when I was using it to actually scaffold out the UI for me. Now, if we go here, and if we go all the way to the top of this chat, this here is the chat that I used to get it. And when I started off with the mind map. Now I have a whole video on creating the mind map. The mind map, if you've never seen a mind mapping exercise, I highly recommend taking a look at that video. You can see it in the channel. And I exported that out. Now this is what the mind map looks like. And it looks like a big jumble. If we drill in a little bit though, you can see, for example, that I'm talking about basically what are the hopes and dreams and objectives and purposes and features of this thing. A mind map is, a little bit of a messy, thinking out loud kind of document. What I did is I exported this out to as an image, and then I went in and I handed that off to my user experience design agent, which is right here. And I said, look at this thing and tell me, like, what do you think about it? So I just wanted to, partly why I asked an open-ended question is I actually don't know how good it's going to do or how great it's going to be able to consume that mind map. But it actually did a very good job. It went through and it identified these kind of key things. I think that I'm not trying to get it to be too perfect at this stage because there's going to be so much iteration, but it did a good first pass at kind of bucketing the key features that my map tried to capture, and I'm good with this. I think it could be, we would iterate on this and drill into more detail, but for now we're in good shape. And as it's supposed to, it's doing that user impact assessment every time. One of the things that was really important that it uncovered for me was this idea of who might be disadvantaged. I did not think about this, and I really like this idea. So this is one of the benefits, like a real UXD person would have said this. This agent said it for me. I don't want this app to be too complicated for beginners. And actually, as a second thing, this triggered for me as well, is that I think that in general, a lot of the apps that people like me built are built for people like myself, especially like middle-aged white guys. And I want this to be useful to a lot of people. And one of the places in particular is just like with women. I think a lot of the apps, and especially in the trading space, it's very kind of bro oriented, and that's just no good. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that. So what I did is I asked it to particularly think about being women friendly, but I definitely don't want to pander. So anyway, I don't know if this is even going to help much in how this thing gets rolled out, but I want to at least try. And that's what I asked the user experience design agent to help me with. So we can flip through this. I worked on a couple of different kind of plans of attack. So we had this big mess of a mind map. It then went and consolidated that down to a relatively small number of key points. And then I started, okay, let's start getting detailed. How are we actually going to do this? And again, I won't go through the rest of this, but what I will do is I'll flip to the outcome. So where we landed, if I go here, if I go to localhost, well, actually, let me do this. I'm just going to go to my link, which is here and here. And so you can ignore this top point up here that's coming out. That's previous work. And here it's showing, in a first pass at what this would look like. It's showing the major areas. I think these areas are probably pretty decent. We're going to have a portfolio area, something around execution, risk. It's not really showing much about dashboards and stuff like that, which is pretty important. Maybe that might fit underneath portfolio. So we'll figure out where that is. So that's future iteration. But you can see that I was able to get from that Miro board to this in and creating an agent that didn't exist before. I did all of that in something like 45 minutes. So pretty outrageous performance, productivity there. All right, so let's leave it at that for now. What I'm going to be talking about in the next video is journaling. So I'm going to dig deep. I've already done a video on journaling and why it's important and how I do journaling personally. So if you're interested in that topic, look up that video. It's in the channel. The next step is to start building out the journaling function in detail. So I'm really looking forward to doing that. And the one reason why I want to do journaling is I think it stands by itself. So I think people can use journaling independent of whatever else they're doing. It'll be much better when it's fully integrated in, but just by itself, it's a slice of functionality that can be done. And then I can actually deploy that up into Azure, and then we can get the non-technical people who don't want to bother with GitHub access to it, and maybe get some feedback and see what kind of adoption we might get. So that's where we're headed. So thank you very much. Just a quick reminder, subscribe, like the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.